Ladies and gents, good to see you. Welcome back to Hightop Sports. We got Mr. Keith Naby here from On3 to talk all things recruiting. Keith, it's been, you guys been on a burner here the last couple of weeks. Billy's been putting everyone to work on the recruiting trail. We didn't get together last week. I know there were some big time visits last week and then
Yeah.
some more this week. I think a few people they wanted to visit did not show up, but talk just a little bit kind of how the momentum is starting to heat up here with 2 weeks just to go.
Yeah, first thing we got to say is I always try to, I don't want to, how do I say this? You don't want people's expectations to run too wild. You still build a lot of this class through the course of the entire cycle. So even if you get hot, even if you're winning games, you still got a lot to do down the stretch to get this thing like in the top 15 range. They can get there, but it's going to take some work.
Sure.
So I think everybody still needs to exhibit some patience. After all, Florida's 6-5. They're not 10-1 or 11-0 So, but I do think this though. I think you're winning. You've said your coach is coming back, and I think people ultimately will write some checks that will help them, do as well as they can in a limited amount of time left, both with this high school class and then the portal opening, which starts in December 9th, I want to say. But yeah, the last 2 weeks have been beneficial. We thought there was a lot of buzz after the LSU game with some kids, and a lot of those guys ended up visiting other schools or not going anywhere this past weekend. So you don't really know what to make of that. Everybody's trying to get these last visits in. It's nuts. But this weekend, I think, was very productive for Florida. Muiz Toncora is a receiver out of Texas that Florida likes. They've already got 2 receivers committed. They'd like to add a third. And I should point out, we're recording this Sunday night. I think Toncora, who's committed to Arizona, and he's a big, tall receiver. There's photos of him circulating. He's taller than DJ Lagway, so he's tall. He's committed to Arizona, and he is. We think he's going to end up in the Florida class, so keep an eye on him. Jahari Medlock is an offensive tackle committed to Cincinnati. We think at some point in the near future he's going to end up in the Florida class. Now, those are not names that are going to get people excited, but again, you don't just magically show up at the top of kids' lists. It just doesn't happen. But they are making some ground with or some headway with some big name guys too, and I wanted to get those guys out of the way first. But you've got a 4-star running back Byron Lewis, who's committed to FSU. He's visited Florida the last 2 weekends, and he's been DMing me. We interviewed him. I think it went great. I got to do some more digging. There's always that visit high, but I think Florida is positioning itself to really make some noise down the stretcher. Now we hear that Georgia may be sniffing around a little bit there too, something to keep an eye on. But that would be big. That would give Florida a third running back. And by the way, one of them committed already, not Waltez Clark, Chad Gasper out of Texas. He's got an injury, and he may not be ready to go next year. So we know Florida likes to rotate running backs. So you're thinking, oh, what do we need an extra running back for? We've already got 2 committed. That's why. 1, he's really good. 2, you may need him. There's probably, there's always attrition. Montrell Johnson, does anybody else leave? So you do need that you constantly need to replenish. So I think Byron Lewis is a guy. Hope I'm not putting you guys to sleep here, but I hope Byron Lewis
No, you're good.
is a guy that could very well end up in the class. Now we've got to flush it all out. FSU's not going to go down without a fight. Look, they're kind of in a unique situation too. They can't just have their whole class dissolve, which means kids committed to FSU may all of a sudden get pay raises the next week. You know what I mean? That's kind of how it works now. And so we'll have to see how that goes. Florida also making progress with, I got to get the guy's name here. I've got to look it up because I can't pronounce it. A Tennessee cornerback commit, Onis Kanabani from Columbia, South Carolina. He visited out of the blue this weekend. It was a kind of a last-minute deal that the media uncovered. Now, Florida had been working on it, as it turns out, for weeks and weeks and weeks. Again, a 4-star cornerback committed to Tennessee. They did not know. The Volunteers did not know he was going to visit. That's significant. And he didn't tell them. So maybe Florida's got a chance. He said after this visit he's probably still committed to Tennessee, but Florida's really giving him something to think about. And there were some other guys as well. Maybe the biggest one, and I'm saving the best for last because we don't want everybody to I don't want to put them to sleep and then they're gone after I give this one first. But Ty Jackson, he's a linebacker we've talked about throughout the whole cycle.
Yeah.
He's from Center Ridge High School in Loxahatchee, just west of West Palm Beach. This summer, everybody thought he was leaning Florida. He goes to the Florida-Miami game. And there were actually rumors that he may commit to Florida that weekend. Well, everybody remembers what happens. You don't lay too many eggs that big, right? But beyond that, what also happened was Florida did not play the young linebackers in that game. And that bothered him and his dad, okay? It did. They I don't know, maybe bothered's a strong word, but it was an observation that they noticed.
Sure.
And, and so then they went to Southern Cal the next weekend and committed. But now Southern Cal, they're only, I think, 6-5. And quite frankly, Florida's 6-5 is a lot better than their 6-5 when you look at the schedules.
Feels
And
better for sure.
that's right. The momentum has shifted. Okay. And he visited Florida all week long. We didn't know whether he was going to visit. He ended up visiting. His dad is just a guy's been so helpful to me. What a nice dude. And Ty is a real quiet guy, but he can really play. There's been some Roquan Smith comparisons who, yes, I did cover in high school up in Montezuma, Georgia, I think is where he was from, a tiny little town on the Flint River. And so, or near the Flint River. And so, this is a guy that Florida has prioritized all through the cycle. They never gave up on him. Maybe it pays off. Maybe it pays off. There's some real buzz that Florida is climbing fast with him, and we'll see. The early signing period begins, I think, December 4th, so their time is running out. And Florida's been working that one hard. So, yes, some good news from this weekend. But they also had a lot of guys visit last weekend, like we mentioned. Some good news. One of the guys they hoped would come back this weekend, Dallas Wilson.
Yeah.
5-star Oregon receiver commit. He didn't make it. He's got some extenuating family circumstances without going into detail. I hate even mentioning that. Good kid, conflicted, says he's going to be somewhere, doesn't. Oregon had a coach at his playoff game Friday night in Orlando, and next thing you know, he didn't go to Florida for his official visit. So who knows what happened? Who knows what was said? But they're going to still work on him. Here's the thing. Even if Florida's away next weekend, they could still have guys on campus. I mean, they'll be back Sunday. Sunday's the last day before the dead period. So Saturday could be a travel day. So you've got this week. Some kids are out of school this week. Some have playoff games next Friday. You're probably not going to get one of those guys on campus. But if a kid, we saw this last week. Bryce Underwood, that elite quarterback that flipped from LSU to Michigan, turns out he was on campus at Michigan 2 days last week. Nothing says you can't do that. So a kid can visit. There'll probably be some surprise visits, and people are like, well, can you tell us who? And, well, that's why it's a surprise, because we don't know, and Florida certainly doesn't want me to know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there could be things like that. Look, Myron Charles, defensive lineman, was going to visit either Florida or Texas. Florida thought he was coming. He ended up going to Texas. But you got that one more week. He's got a playoff game Friday. Maybe you can get him on campus Sunday. You know what I mean? So there's multiple situations like that. But the staff is really working hard. They're in it with some big-name guys. Solomon Thomas, 5-star FSU offensive line commit. Yeah, there's chatter out there. They fired his offensive line coach. There's rumors out there about what the offensive line coach's future may be, and this, that, and the other. And Florida's still working on him. He was at LSU this weekend. I haven't heard much on that. He's flat out admitted to people that NIL is going to be a big factor, and he's a 5-star. Now he could play any of the 5 positions, but he's more likely going to be inside. So we'll see how that goes. But Florida thinks they've made some pretty good progress with him. He's very good friends with Tramel Jones, the Gators quarterback commit. So,
Yeah.
I think that the thing is, I don't expect Florida to just go out and land 10, 4 or 5 stars in the next week. But I think with the NIL situation, they may be able to go out and grab a handful of them and surprise some people, because it costs a lot of money to get everybody. But you might be able to go get a few of the big guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we'll have to see how that goes. Look, there's momentum. People want to play with Lagway and all that stuff, but it still takes work, right? It still takes work.
For the Solomon Thomas, people were pretty upset when they found out on Saturday morning that he wouldn't be there. And I was like, look, I mean, you always want them to visit. It's never fun when they don't visit. But kind of what you just said, like, hey, I wouldn't worry just too much just yet, the fact that he's not visiting, correct? Or that he did not visit.
And by the way, I mean, Florida knew all along there was a good chance he was going to go to LSU for the weekend. We actually wrote that last Sunday. A Florida source said, we think he's going to LSU. So it didn't catch them by surprise. I mean, they wanted to get the 5-star receiver Jamie French back on campus.
Yep.
And he didn't. He's committed to Texas, and he showed up in Texas. So that's not a great sign, let's be honest. But, again, you still have this final weekend for some Hail Marys, right? Okay. Dallas Wilson, the Oregon commit that I mentioned, didn't go anywhere. Florida defensive line coach Gerald Chapman went and saw the 4-star defensive lineman Joseph Mbachu in the Atlanta area, who was once committed to Florida. They saw him Friday night. Didn't work. He went to Texas the next day and committed to Texas over the weekend. So there was always going to be cases like that, right? Myron Charles, the 4-star defensive lineman, committed to Texas. He was at Florida last weekend. They thought he was coming back until late in the week, and Texas got him back. So it's look, you don't want to lose to anybody, but it's not like they're losing guys to terrible programs here. But I think if you're a Florida fan, you're thinking, okay, when are we going to start winning some of these? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, look, they did last year with DJ Lagway. They did with LJ McCray. They did with Miles Graham. Now, obviously, he's Ernest Graham's son, but look, he almost flipped Alabama late, by the way, okay? I mean, that was a real deal. That was a real thing happening, okay? So there are no layups. They had Aaron Childs probably could have gone anywhere. Look what he's doing. Jaden Ball, they beat Alabama late. So let's not act like these guys aren't beating anybody. Alabama absolutely wanted Jaden Ball. Absolutely wanted them. Now, how did Florida get him? Only he knows. Relationships, NIL. I mean, look, it's all of it. And so they have had some big wins, but this cycle, not as many. You know, they were up against it. Let's just be totally honest. We knew from the outset, the way they finished last season, you knew that Billy Napier was going to have some pressure on him going into this season. Everybody knew it. Recruits knew it. Other schools knew it, and then were able to use that to their advantage. And you really saw that in June when Florida's official visit lists were just whatever. They weren't Florida Gator-like official visit lists. So they really were in a hole, and it was largely because of what they did on the field the last couple of years, but also just this situation, right? And so they've been digging out of that, and they're fighting with guys. Look, they got the quarterback they wanted. They've got two good running backs. Hopefully for them, they're going to add a third really good running back in Byron Lewis, the FSU commit. At tight end, they've got the two guys they wanted. At receiver, they've got 2 4-stars plus a third guy, Gelsey, Tashawn Gelsey from Jacksonville. He's a 4-star. A hybrid receiver / tight end. Now, FSU's pushing for him, telling him you're a true receiver in Tallahassee, so giving him something to think about. You think, why would a kid go to FSU right now? They suck, right? They've got 2 wins. They're absolutely pitiful on the field. Well, you got to go for fit too, right? You got to go for fit. It can't always be about what's in your heart too. So if he feels like he fits better there, good luck to him because he's a good kid. But Florida would like to hang on. He's a unique athlete, hybrid. Offensive line recruiting is where Florida's really got to pick it up, obviously.
Yeah.
And so, look, that's been the case for a few years.
Tavarian Dice, Auburn guy. How are we looking?
You know, he visited Auburn. Tavares Dice, he's from Langston Hughes High School with, Atlanta. That's just a few miles away from where Cam Newton, the former Gators signee, went to high school. And very good program. He visited Florida last weekend, his second game visit here. It went great. NIL strong, we hear. But he was back at Auburn this weekend for a multi-day visit. And who knows what's really going on in his head. I mean, I think Florida feels some optimism, but I know Auburn feels some optimism and confidence as well. So, look, people are like, oh, God, don't these guys know anything? This is your job. You cover recruiting. How do you not know this? Well, if a kid doesn't know where he wants to go, how am I supposed to know, right? Okay. So you just take the information. I mean, my gut says maybe Auburn, but I'm just telling you, Florida's in that. I mean, he had a really good visit last week. I take that back. My gut doesn't tell me anything. I mean, I think Florida can still maybe get him even after this weekend at Auburn. But again, it used to be. You all right there?
Yeah.
we're both dealing with sicknesses here.
Yeah.
Mine's more of a mental sickness, but so he visited Florida last. I was going to say with recruiting, it used to be what the kid tells you, what his mom tells you, what his high school coach tells you, what Uncle Fred tells you, what Aunt Phyllis tells you, what Grandpa Joe, and now you've got, and then also your sources with a given program that you communicate with. Now you've got this unknown sometimes, which is the NIL, and whose bag is bigger. I hate to say that because that bag implies bad, illegal, all that. But that's not what we're saying. But
not anymore. It's just facts.
Who's got the better situation for a young guy? And that I can't answer that. I've heard that it's very good for him at both. He's a high priority for both programs. Okay, so it's going to maybe just come down to gut feeling.
What is it you think? I mean, obviously the letter comes out, right? Of keeping Napier. There's a little bit of momentum on the with them winning some games. We hear some murmurs about the money that was being put away for the buyout is now going to be distributed to the portal and recruiting. I mean, that just seems a bit, you can kind of look at that how you want, but what's been the big kind of flip here for the last 2 weeks? I think we had Zach Alberti on. It was kind of a ghost town for a few weeks, even months.
Here's what I would say. I mean, I think that more NIL money is coming in. I do believe that. I've heard enough to believe that that's going to happen. But let me try to think this through here. If you were somebody that was putting together money to have a coach fired, and then they say, we're keeping this coach, you're the same guy that wanted him fired, and now you're going to just give all your millions of dollars to help him out, to help the guy you just. So I don't know that it quite works that way. But
Sure.
here's the thing. I believe, and again, it's very easy for me, you, and everybody listening to be cavalier with other people's money. But if you decide that you want to keep someone, you owe it to your program and yourself and whatever you believe in to help that person succeed. Okay. Otherwise, you would have just gotten rid of them. Right.
Sure.
And so I do think that the check, was it take check stroke? What do you do? Stroke? I don't even know what the word
Stroke
is.
a check.
I think,
Yeah.
yes, I think the people, I think the people that are, that do that sort of thing are going to get behind them,
Okay.
especially with what you've seen the last couple of weeks. Look, there's no guarantee that they've turned the corner. They've won 2 big games,
Sure.
but we don't know what the future holds. But that said, they were impressive, hard-fought wins. They didn't come easy. They got out-statisticed, whatever the word is, in just about every category in both games. But
Yeah.
they fought, and they've got some promise there, right? So I think people are going to get in line and want to help these guys out, right? And also, Billy seems like a different guy. I mean, I really like him. I've communicated with him a little bit since he was in, I want to say, Clemson and Summit, Alabama. I've always liked the guy. Okay, don't tell the Auburn fans that I like the Bama guy, but I did. He's a nice guy. And then a lot of times myself and Corey Bender and who works with me and Blake Alderman at 24/7, we sit out in front of the building. And Billy Park's in a different spot now, but he used to come and chat with us sometimes. Man, he's just a good guy, man. He's just a good guy. But then you see him talk in press conferences, a little bit different. It's a little drawn out, long-winded, and I'm the expert along being long-winded. So, but not real energetic. But man, he doesn't look like the same guy the last few weeks.
Agreed.
He looks like a different guy. So my only point to that
Swagger
is
out. A little swagger about
the
him.
only point I'm making there is now he's talking like a guy that I think can go into a room and get people to give him money, quite frankly.
Okay.
Whereas before he might have been like, oh, geez, oh, God, what's this guy? Oh, my God. Now he's got some energy to him.
Sure.
In the speech after the game, not a speech, but his interview after the game yesterday, you always pulled for him. Now you're seeing some results. So I think Florida's going to be, and I thought this even 3-4 weeks ago. Once they announced they were going to keep him, I thought somebody at the end is going to line up and say, you know what? We're keeping this guy. Let's, by God, help this guy, right? And I think it's happening. I think it's going to happen. And even before they won these games, I thought, don't be surprised. And I wrote this, don't be surprised if they pick up a couple surprises at the end. Don't be surprised if there's surprises. That's dumb, but you know what I'm saying. And I think it's going to happen. I don't know who. I think Ty Jackson, maybe Byron Lewis. I mean, they're no longer surprises because we're writing about them. But 4 days ago, they would have been surprises, right? So
Sure.
I feel like there's some potential there for them to finish big. I don't know that it's going to get them into the top 10. I think that's a big ask. But, if you get Solomon Thomas, a 5-star, then all of a sudden that seems more.
You can make some more moves, add some more pieces, and the portal obviously holds some weight too.
Now, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh. One of the guys that Florida is working to keep, and as we're recording, he's committed to Florida, Jeremiah McLeod, defensive lineman out of Georgia. Georgia's
Visited
pushing.
Georgia. Yeah.
Visited Georgia over the weekend. I think he's going to end up at Georgia. Now, maybe I'll be wrong, but I don't think so. So that's going to leave you with a couple defensive linemen committed, one of them being Jalen Wiggins, who Notre Dame's pushing for, but we think he's going to stick with Florida. At least that's the latest intel. And but then you look at the O-line and the D-line where you really got to win. You got to build your team from the inside out. And you only have one offensive lineman committed right now, I think. Am I right there? Am I missing somebody?
I believe it's not, maybe 2. It's not many. We got Pierre Lewis. Is it just Pierre Lewis, or there's one more?
Yeah, that's the only one. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm not on top of my game here. Being under the weather, that's a great excuse that I'm going to use for everything. But
I think you're right.
Yeah, so you've got one defensive lineman committed, Daniel Pierre-Louis, who, by the way, is a 3-star. But they think that now senior evaluation. But Florida thinks that this is a 4-star level guy. Now that's a little bit of a leap of faith because you have to believe your staff is smarter than every other staff and all that stuff. But I think one thing they've been pretty good at is evaluations. I think so. But only one offensive lineman committed. If Jeremiah McLeod exits the class, that means you only have 2 defensive linemen committed. So they got some work to do there. There's also been chatter that a lot of the money is going to go to the portal. And that's probably wise. Although, look, it doesn't get any easier. You're still going to have to beat out Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, Texas. I mean, it's the same people. You're going to have to beat out for everybody. But if you have a bigger need for a guy to position, you may be able to give him a lot more money than everybody else to make sure that gets done. And
I
those
think that
recruitments happen
with
really fast.
the portal attack too, you can sell a little bit more of a now dream, right? With the recruiting, you're
Oh,
focusing
yeah.
more on the building, and with the DJ Lagway and the progress that they've seen over the last 2 weeks, you can go get called pieces like, hey, like Elijah Badger, you can come and make a big impact this next year because of DJ Lagway. So maybe that could be that portal play. When maybe in years past it was a little uneasy going into that offseason, and that might be where a big pull is.
I think the key is not always, but you got to get that guy on campus either first or second.
Yeah,
You have a shorter window. So if a guy enters the portal December 9th and you want him on campus in early January, you got 3-4 weeks. Plus you got the holidays, you got Christmas, you got New Year's. I mean, there's a lot going on, right? And coaches like a little time off too, and kids like time off, and so it can happen really quick. And so you get that guy on campus first. He likes what he sees. He likes the role that you have for him. He wants to play with Lagway. He wants to play for Austin Armstrong or whatever, and the money's right. You can get it done. Okay? So you as a staff have to be way out front of everything for that to happen. You've got to know things are happening before they happen. And, I think the staff's getting better at that. I think because if you look at last year, like I think they knew Pup Howard, that was all going to happen, right? And they were able to get that done pretty quickly. I mean, so they're going to be, I'm sure they've been working on this all year to be ready for who could enter the portal, what's the word, looking at every roster, already evaluating film, because I think they've learned, like a lot of staffs, you can't delay. You really can't delay. Now, in the past, that spring portal window, you had more time. But now, if a guy's going in now and you need him in January, you got to hustle, man. You got to hustle. And also, here's the other thing. They now have a quarterback that they can sell to everybody.
Yeah.
Right? And so there may be receivers out there that are thinking, man, I was never going to leave, but I don't know, man. I mean, my guy coming back at quarterback don't throw like this dude. So maybe I ought to put the feelers out. Maybe I ought to have a third, have my agent or whatever talk to
I'll
these
say
guys.
their evaluations in the portal have done well. Badger, DK, and Pearsall have been fantastic. So
yeah, and so I will say this: DK, I don't know who else wanted him. He didn't really. I mean, I'm not saying other people didn't want him. Let me rephrase that. He didn't talk, so I don't really know what the deal was there. Badger was an interesting one because it was a little leap of faith. He had these injuries, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't know, like, what if we bring this guy in and obviously he did the physical, I'm sure, and all that stuff. But what if this guy comes in and it's a nagging injury and all that stuff? And now they did well last year in the portal, but at the end of the day, they're still a 6-5 team. And they know that. Like Billy said, the work is still just starting, right? But they're going to have to replace Badger. I guess, could DK come back maybe? I can't.
No, they're both gone. Both gone.
Okay. So you've got some guys to replace. Veteran guys on the offensive line, you may lose some guys. Defensive line, Austin Barber's a guy that could come back, but you know what? If he gets a pretty good draft grade and he's a guy that's had some injuries like he has, he may just say, you know what? I got to go, man, because what if I come back? I'd love to win. I'd love to turn this thing around, but what if I come back and get injured again and I never get to live my dream? I know guys, Cornelius Ingram's one that never got to live his dream because he got injured in college. And so it hurts, right? It hurts when you know these people. So a lot of these guys are going to have some tough decisions, but they're going to have to replace some guys. But they also have some pretty young talent on the team, like Shamar James left. You feel like you've got a good group. But also now, remember, what did I say? The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh. There may be guys on this team right now that are thinking about leaving that we don't even know about. We're thinking, hey, everybody's happy. It's not always about being happy. It's sometimes about money, being closer to grandma, being with friends. Maybe I got a girlfriend that plays at NC State, and that's where I need to be. And by the way, they're going to pay me 3 times more than floor. I mean, there's a lot of unknown variables here.
Sure.
So it's basically become like the NFL. You get guys coming and going and all that
Very
stuff.
much.
And,
It's going to be a crazy 2 weeks. And I mean, look, I think we'll try to get you back on maybe a little before signing day, which is the 4th. I think it's going to be mayhem. And maybe, like you said, maybe we'll get some surprises, and maybe we'll get surprises 2.0 even that you guys aren't expecting, and really kind of turn this class around.
Well, look, if they can just get finish with some pretty solid players down the stretch here, I think, gosh, like a couple weeks ago, we would have all thought anything inside the top 20 would be a miracle right now, right?
Yeah.
Well, they ain't that far outside the top 20. So a couple big name guys. I mean, Vernell Brown and Tramel Jones are convinced some big guys are coming. Ty Jackson be a guy that's a big name guy, just outside the top 100. If you could get Solomon Thomas, I do think if you're a fan, and actually if you're a staff too, you want to give the fans something, but it would be nice if Florida could have one really big one. I mean, don't get me wrong, Ty Jackson's awesome, and he's been hurt most of his senior year, and I think that hurt his ranking. But it'd be nice to land a 5-star, just to let people know, all right, this is more than just a catching lightning in a bottle against LSU and Ole Miss. This is a program that is now put together 3 straight classes, and now they're about to go do some damage in the portal. That's what fans want to see.
Yep.
That's what fans.
DJ Lagway and LJ McCray were that last year, and we're seeing what that's done. So if you give us, give us another one, we'll be pumped.
They don't want the team to. It's great when your team overachieves. I think fans are sick of that, though. They want a team that's winning because they got better talent than everybody. All right.
Yeah.
And so I think Billy Napier thinks that they may not be far away from that, but you can't have one slip up, which one mediocre class can set you back. So now they've won some games. They've got a lot of guys on campus. They got to finish strong, and then you go win the portal, and all of a sudden you've had a good class. Because really, the portal is part of your class now too. Let's not separate them. Let's put them together. So we'll see what they can do.
Well, Keith, I appreciate you, man. This has been fantastic. I know people have been chomping at the bit to get an idea of the weekend, the visits, where we at. I think this is a great analysis of what's to come. There's some buzz that some things could be coming. So be sure to keep the bell turned on. Tell them where they can give you a find, Keith, so they can follow you with the right and all that good stuff.
Yeah, if you just go to gatorsonline.com, we got a lot of stuff. I think they've got some pretty good deals right now. You can join for next to nothing. I mean, it's and look, the next couple weeks is when you want to be there. Excuse me, actually, probably the next 6 weeks, because that gets you all
the next month.
season.
Yeah, through the year.
It's going to be an exciting offseason. All of a sudden, the program's gut buzz. There was no juice after last season. Come on, man, there wasn't.
No, it was just the coaching flips, but that doesn't really get things exciting. Yeah. But you really see hey, this could be good, and then with the portal additions, like, all right, well, you're piecing together a run.
You got signing day, you got portal, and then look, there's always going to be coaching changes, staff changes. There's always going to be some of that, right? And then you've got an off season where you're now excited, and let's hope they can beat FSU. And I don't take anybody for granted, and then go out and win a bowl game. And all of a sudden, 8-5 sure doesn't sound too freaking bad right now, man.
It's a lot of wins.
They were 1-2 and looked terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like we were going to win 2 games at one point. It was scary.
Oh my God! And then
it was scary.
Then Miami goes out and is barely surviving against some pretty average teams, and you're thinking, dear God, teams turn it around, and let's see how they finish. But I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate everybody listening, so thank you.
Appreciate you, man. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace and love, baby. Thank you, guys.